Once you're in Sketchbook, if you have an ongoing artwork that you have already open that you want to close to be able to work on your new assignment, on the top of your screen on the toolbar, you're going to go to the three dots with the three lines, and you're going to go to Gallery. If you go to Gallery, I can see that I already have this artwork saved. If you do not have it saved, the application would prompt you to choose to either save or delete your file. You would click save if you want to keep it, and I think the phrase it actually uses is discard. Because I've already saved a backup of this file, I don't need to save it again. To make a new artwork, I can click the plus sign and choose New Sketch. I want it to be 1080 by 1080. I already have the preference saved because I did this already. If you have not made this size canvas, click on Custom, and then change the number to 1080 and 1080 in both places. Make sure you uncheck Keep Proportions. Hit the check mark when you're done. And it gives you a new canvas. I can pinch on my Promethean board to make it smaller. And you can pinch on your touch screen if you're using a touchscreen Chromebook to make it smaller. I want to first check my settings for my current brush. On the left-hand side of the screen, you have your painting and erasing and drawing tools. I have made my designer tools my default. I'm going to teach you how to do that as well. At the top of that left-hand bar, click the pencil with the slider underneath it at the very top. In your library, you can scroll down to see the other brushes and pencils and erasers that you have access to by default. Everybody has the same default tools to draw and erase and paint with. I like the designer brush set, so I pinned it. To pin a set, I tap and hold on a brush, like the Dream brush in Designer. I get a little thumbtack icon. Usually it's gray, but you tap on it to turn it blue, and that will pin it to be your preferred set. Something else you want to do, especially with the Dream brush, I do this, so I have it set to the brush. I can go to my settings in that same panel, and my brush type is marker. Other brush types do different things. If I tap on a brush type, underneath the name Dream brush, it gives me a preview. I do prefer to use either standard or marker. If I'm in standard mode, I want to tap on advanced and adjust my pressure so that it's the same with light and heavy pressure. I want to make my opacity also the same, as well as the flow. The stamp allows me to adjust my spacing. And I can also adjust my roundness. Okay. Those are pretty advanced. If you're in doubt, you can always just choose the marker setting, and that one works pretty well. Tap anywhere outside of that menu to leave the menu. Choose the color you would like the base of this landscape painting to be. You can pick any color by tapping the circle at the top of your layers panel. So I can click in this donut on the outside, and I can click around in the diamond shape on the inside to choose different shades of a color. This purple looks pretty good. I'm happy with it. I can tap anywhere to leave that menu. We're going to draw a circle. For the landscape drawing, your artwork does have to be a circle containing a landscape that you've drawn either with traditional materials or using Sketchbook. To make a perfect circle, you're going to use your shape tools on the top menu bar. Make it an oval. We're going to click and drag. If you're on your Chromebook, you can use your keyboard and your touchpad and use Shift, click, and drag to make a perfect circle. It doesn't have to be in the center. That has filled my entire canvas for a couple of reasons. I can hit the Undo button, which is on your topmost toolbar, so it's the arrow pointing back. Undo. If I look back at my tool panel with my brushes and my erasers, there's a slider, and that changes the size of your brush, and you can see it's giving me a preview. So if I make that smaller, that means the thickness of that circle edge will be smaller. So let's try that again. Sometimes people will try to draw a circle or other shape and they'll be on it an eraser, and that doesn't work either. Okay, it's not in the center, and that's okay. It's mostly a circle. Circular enough anyway. If it bothered you, you could hit the undo arrow, and you can try again. Make it pretty big, but not off the edge of the paper. To fill this, on the topmost toolbar, click the fill bucket and tap inside. To move it so that it is in the center, click on the arrows pointing in multiple directions next to the fill bucket. So the instructions tell you exactly how to use this tool. Tap and drag with one finger to move, pivot with two fingers to rotate and pinch to scale, double tap with one finger to reset. So I can use one finger to move it. I can pinch to make it bigger or smaller as needed. I don't need to rotate it because it's a circle. Get it mostly in the center. Don't let it go off the edge. Tap done when you're done. To make a new layer, on your layers panel, which is on the right hand side of your screen, you already have one layer that has just your circle. We're going to tap the plus sign at the top of that panel, right underneath where you chose your color, to make a new layer. So now you have another layer with nothing on it above your circle. Something that throws students off is that if you don't have the layer unlocked or accessed, you can't draw on it, which makes sense. So if I accidentally tap that padlock, just make sure you tap it again to unlock it, because if a layer is locked, you cannot draw or paint on it. Okay? So I'm on a separate layer, and I can create the ground. This is my landscapes anchor point. It's going to have the foreground, so things that are at the extreme front of the picture, and the middle ground, and some of the background. So I'm going to pick a different color, any color. This doesn't have to be a realistic landscape. Let's go with lighter purple. I have my dream brush selected. I'm going to draw my ground, kind of in the middle of my circle. I can refine it if I want to. And I'm also going to draw outside of my circle to connect them. So I'm going to connect from end all the way around, stay on the canvas outside of the circle. If you don't connect them, when you try to fill it, it's going to fill the entire canvas. Choose your fill bucket and fill your ground. To clip off those edges, because you want to keep this entire composition in the circle, we're going to make a selection using our first layer. So our first layer was that purple circle, or yours might be a different color. Click on it to make it active. Choose the selection tool from the very top toolbar. It looks like a dashed rectangle with an arrow pointing at it. And you're going to choose the magic wand tool. It looks like a magic wand with a dashed oval around it. I'm going to click anywhere outside of my circle, and that creates a selection indicated by dashed lines. So everything except for my circle is selected. I can go back to my ground layer. That means I need to click on the layer, the tiny picture of my ground, not the ground that is overlapping the circle. Choose your eraser. And if I erase, it's not going to let me erase inside of the circle because that's not selected. So I can really easily clean up the area outside of my circle. To remove your selection, I can go back to my selection tool and click on the dashed rectangle with the X. Leave my selection tool. I'm going to make another layer by clicking the plus sign on my layers panel. I'm going to choose another color. And I'm going to draw what will be in my foreground, my middle ground, and to an extent my background. So you can draw trees, you can draw cactuses, you can draw pretty much whatever you want as long as it's something that gives you a sense of scale and depth. So if I'm drawing on the bottom of my artwork, the bottom of that circle, whatever I draw there is closest to the person looking at the picture. So it's going to be tall. If I draw further away, it's going to be medium sized. In fact, I should make my brush smaller, so I'm going to undo that. Make my brush a little smaller. Medium sized. Oops. If your lines are super wobbly and that bothers you, you can turn on stroke prediction on the top panel. It and smooth it out a little bit, not too much. Actually, I think you have to make it a little bit bigger. The nice thing about digital art is there's a lot you can do and undo. So I'm just making lines for now. Do not like that. Because I like the idea of trees. Oops. My touch screen is very sensitive. A faraway tree is going to be quite small. Medium trees in the middle. I'm going to make a new layer. Notice I'm putting everything on its own layer. I'm going to choose a different color. I'm going to put a river in my landscape. If you put everything on its own layer, it's easier to control and easier to make cleanups or change your mind about something without having to worry about, oh no, I just ruined my whole artwork with that choice. So I made my river, and I made it one enclosed shape, okay, so that I can fill it and clean it up really easily. If I wanted to have some trees overlapping that, I could put my tree layer on top of my river layer. So if I grab my tree layer and click and drag, I can place it on top of my river layer. And then I can go back to that color. So if I want that same color that I was painting my trees with before, I can go back to the color circle at the top of my toolbar, or excuse me, at the top of my layers panel. Click on the eyedropper, and then move that crosshair right on top of the tree. That's the color I want. So I don't want to fill it. I want to switch back to my brush and draw some trees overlapping my river. So to clean this up, I'm going to make a selection. And this time I'm going to make a selection of my ground. Okay, so I'm going to go to my ground layer, my layers panel. I'm going to go up to my toolbar at the top of my screen, go to my selection tool, choose the magic wand, click anywhere outside of the ground. Now I can go to my river layer, grab my eraser, and I can erase the parts of the river that are outside of my ground. And I can also erase the parts of my trees that are sticking out from the bottom of my ground, but only if I'm on the tree layer. So I have to go to the tree layer and then erase. And I don't want to erase the tops of the trees because I want them to stay there. And then I can leave my selection. Okay, so if you make a new layer, it's easier to control what your artwork looks like. I'm going to put some mountains in my background. So I'm going to go down to my circle layer, make that active, and then make a new layer. So this new empty layer is sandwiched between my ground and my sky. I'm going to choose a color for my mountains. I'm going to really light purpley gray. I'm going to draw my mountains. I have my dream brush selected, whichever brush you're using. Go ahead and draw my mountains. Because it's underneath the ground layer, I can keep drawing. In fact, if I want to hide the ground layer, I can click the eyeball on the ground layer, but I'm still on my mountain layer. And now I can see the edges of my mountain. And I can connect them so that I can fill them in solidly. Now I can choose my bucket tool and fill them in. You can't fill them in solidly if the ends don't touch because it's going to think you want to fill the whole canvas. You can check my work by unhiding my ground layer by clicking the eyeball. Pretty good. I'm going to make a new layer above my mountains, do my mountain texture. So I'm going to do the shadows on my mountain with like a more, let's go a little bit more pinky. Actually, I think blue because there's blue on the river and I do want to tie those together. So I'm just going to draw some shadows on my mountains. I'm on a separate layer. Nice wiggly shadows. And there's a handout on this assignment that shows you how to do this, like with pictures. Clip off the edge of my texture. I'm going to use the mountain selection. So if I go down to my mountain layer, have my selection tool, magic wand, click outside the mountains, go back up to my texture layer, grab my eraser tool, which I already have active, and make it bigger again. I can just erase those extra sketchy marks outside of the mountain. Leave my selection tool. Go down to my circle. So I have a bunch of layers and I have to scroll. Go down to my circle. Grab the magic wand tool. This time, no, I'm still going to click outside the circle. Click outside the circle. You know you've clicked outside the circle when you have the dashed lines around the edge of the circle and around the edge of the square. Go back up to my mountain layer. Erase the pieces of the mountain that are outside using my eraser tool. And I can leave my selection tool. Going up to my mountain texture again, switching back to my green brush. I'm going to put just some ridges, make it a little bigger, just as we come down the edge of the mountain. Pretty good. If I want to merge my texture onto my mountains, I can tap on my texture layer and choose merge. Please do not choose merge all. That's a big no. Just merge once. So now my mountains have the texture as part of their layer because I know I don't need to put anything else in there. Looking at this on my screen, the purple that I've used for the ground and the purple that I've used for the sky are really similar, so I'm going to make my sky darker. So I'm going down to my circle layer, grab my fill bucket, change my color. I'm going to sample this purple that I have. Let me try that again. Okay. Sample the purple that I have and make it a little bit darker. And then I'm going to fill it. Oops. I'm on the wrong layer. Undo. So I'm on my circle layer. And now I can fill it. And it's darker, and that's a little bit better. Okay. I can certainly do things like I can put in a line of trees. So if I go to my mountain layer and I make a new layer, I can put in a ridge line of trees. So if I switch back to a paintbrush, I can play around. What do these paintbrushes that I have already do? So I could try these digital brushes. I can go to the brushes in my library and I can see what those do by looking at the preview. There are so many brushes in this program that do so many different things. So let's see. If I want to make a ridge line of trees, so they're far away, and I can't see any texture really from the individual tree, I think something like this will work. Let's try it. I'm going to try a dark purple. I'm going to sample color that I've used for the trees already. Make it darker. Almost black, but not quite. Tap anywhere. So I'm on a layer underneath my ground layer in front of my mountains. So it's going to show up sandwiched between them. Let's see what happens if I paint. I'm going to clean up that selection by going to my circle. I don't know what this layer is doing here. I'm just going to leave it there. I think it's for my sky, and I just forgot that I made it. Go down to my circle, make a selection, go up to my tree line, erase my tree line where it comes out of the circle, just to clean up those edges, keep it nice and crisp. That's what's so appealing about digital art. It's easy to get very flat, very crisp kind of designs. All right, so this blank layer I already have, mysteriously. If you don't have a blank layer above your circle and behind all of your landscape elements, you can make one. I have one. I don't remember making it, but I'll just use it. I'm going to make stars. I'm going to play around with which brush makes the best looking stars. So you'll see that there are glow brushes, there are splatter brushes, there are dots, right? There are all kinds of things you can try to make stars. There's even certainly, there are stars literally that you could try to use. But I want to go for like those nice, satisfying, like pinprick type stars. If I go to my felt pen, go to my settings, I can go to standard and change it to glow. And I can go to spacing, so under stamp. I want my spacing to go way up so that the individual dots show up. Rotation doesn't matter because it's a circle. Scale doesn't really matter because it can't tell super well, what this looks like. Randomness, let's see what that is. Size randomness, yes, that's what I want. So it's going to get bigger or smaller. So I have different size stars in my sky. Flow randomness, whether they're bright or dim. Rotation randomness doesn't matter because it's the same. Spacing randomness, that might be helpful for skies. So let's play around with this. I'm on a layer. I don't have to love it. I'm going to switch to white. I'm going to paint and see what happens. Oh yes, that is working out lovely. So because I mess around with the spacing and the randomness of the opacity, that's definitely looking like stars at night to me. You could try making this bigger. I'm going to make a whole bunch of stars really small. Maybe I could cluster them together to make like a Milky Way. Make it just a smidge bigger. Oh, that's too big. Undo. That looks pretty good for stars. Let's see what else I can play with. So I could make, and these obviously we're going outside the circle. Not that I can see it, but just so I can clean it up. I'm going to go to my circle. Select outside of it. The more you practice this, the easier it gets. And you're thinking, I can't even see the stars outside this orchard. Why would I do this? Just in case. Okay, so I'm erasing it. I can't see the stars because I use white stars, but hopefully they're gone. And then get rid of my selection. Let's get even fancier. So I'm going to make another layer. And what happens if I preemptively make a selection? So if I go down to my circle, and this time if I select my circle, I'm on my empty layer. Not this layer, that's your stars. This empty layer. What happens? Can I paint inside of this? Is it going to let me? Let's find out. What does this brush do? If I choose green and I paint, it's going to let me paint in just inside. Oh yeah, it is. Okay, so my plan's going to work. I'm on, what is this brush called? The synthetic brown bristle, and that is inside of the designer brush. And I think I'm going to use this to make like an aurora kind of design. I'm going to just mess around with the size, the flow. So you look at the northern lights, it kind of makes like a curtain going across. And I'm going to switch to, sometimes they're red at the bottom too, which is cool. Make this slower flow, a little bit smaller brush. So if I continuously wiggle my brush, so that's blending, and some of it's more intense, and some of it's less intense, just like an actual paintbrush. It's pretty cool. All right, so now I'm going to use those blending brushes that I know I have. Let's see, which one am I going to play with? Library, smudge brush, what does this one do? Smudge flat, smudge round, coarse round, soft flat brush. I like the sound of that. Let's see what this does. Some smudging. Ooh, smudging down is better. Ooh, yeah. Smudge down. That looks good. Another fun thing, if I tap on my layer, I can change what's called the blending mode. So it's set to normal. I can click that and I can choose what to do if I set to lighten. Oh, that's cool. Or screen. Color dodge. Ooh, interesting. Linear dodge. Linear dodge isn't bad. Glow. Meh. Soft glow. That's not bad. Overlay. Nah. Hue. No. Saturation. No. No. You know, luminosity's not bad. I like soft glow. That's pretty cool. Color dodge. No, it's too pixelated. Lighten was pretty cool. I do like the way lighten looks because that turquoise color really goes with my river and my mountains. But let's see what normal looks like again. Yeah, I'm going to go with light. All right, and if you're happy with it, you can click back and then click anywhere to get out of there. Pretty good. Okay, so I can make a selection and then paint inside of it. I can get rid of my selection now because I don't need it. My selection. Get rid of it. I can leave my selection tool. That's done, technically. I did it. I would maybe put more trees in there, but that meets all of my requirements. I'm going to try something else. I'm going to go to my background. If I hide my background, oh, it does work. That's awesome. So if I hid my background, I click the eyeball on the layer called background so I can't see it. This checkerboard isn't a checkerboard. It actually is the way that a program tells you that it's transparent. So if this is a transparent background, then I should be able to save it as a transparent digital sticker that's a circle. Let's try to save this file. We're going to go to the three dots with the three lines on the top menu. Choose Gallery. Save Current Sketch. I'm going to call this Circle. That's not how you spell circle. landscape. We call this circle landscape 2 because I already made one. Hit your check mark when you're happy. And if I want to share this, let's see. What does this button do? Share. So if I share this picture, I can send it to Classroom or I can send it to Drive. And it's a PNG, which means it is indeed transparent. It worked. I'm just going to tap on my Drive. I could put it in my art folder. Is that a good example? And click Select. And then click Save.